walk back towards the entry. Welcome to use that. Please do not live beneath your privileges. Get some of my wife's treats. They're amazing. And if you're looking for the trash when you're done, it's a pull-out underneath the water. So that bottom cabinet, that's where the trash is. We're going to start with we'll have a pledge allegiance. We'll haul our old flag that we've retired from out front in here, and we'll do a pledge allegiance. But first, God comes first. We're going to ask Mark to offer our opening prayer. Then we'll do a pledge, and I'll introduce Phil. Thank you.
Our kind Father in heaven, we're so grateful to gather here this evening as free citizens. We're grateful for opening this home that allows us to do this here and the opportunity to gather and discuss these issues. Lord, we're so grateful for thy founding of this nation, the Constitution which thou established here to give us, recognize our freedoms and the rights that we have. We pray tonight, Heavenly Father, that thou will bless our nation and help us survive through the difficult struggles and turbulence that we have in our society right now. We pray for thy guidance. We ask for thy spirit here tonight. We also pray for a blessing upon our candidates, that they may express their vision and serve thee in this process, Heavenly Father. We pray for these things this evening. In the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Getting the flag. Color guards.
It's not quite to be retired, but pretty close.
Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
To volunteer for film.
Again, welcome to our home. I met Phil a few years back when we got involved in some voting integrity, I'll say issues. Been involved with a couple of groups and individuals who have been diligently trying to get information to verify whether our elections here locally in Utah are on the up and up. And that's landed us in court. I was in the Court of Appeals not last week, but the week before, arguing. Phil came in support. And hopefully we can get some good decisions and we can actually see the public's records and see what has gone on. But I'm grateful for Phil's unwavering courage and his bravery standing up in the House for voter integrity, standing up against big government, not only as a county commissioner in San Juan County, but also in the House. And I can't think of anybody better right now to lead our state. I'm grateful to have spent some time with Phil and interacted with him. And, you know, when I first met Phil, he wasn't running for governor, so I wasn't thinking of him in terms of governor, but I immediately knew he's a good man, and I got to meet his wife, Jody, and get to know them a little bit. And I'm grateful for such good people that give of their time. I'm grateful to each of you for coming, and you know, many of you are delegates. How many of you are delegates, by the way? Okay, so most of us here. If you are not, please search the precinct portal on the Republican Party's website, and you can find who your state delegates are and tell them about Phil. Talk to them about Phil. I have yet to find anyone who prefers the incumbent. That might happen with machines or otherwise, but we need to spread the word as best we can. Those who can, there's some clipboards circling around for volunteers for at convention and otherwise. We definitely need good people's help. And for those who are able, we've got a little Venmo scan there for those who can donate to his campaign. Any amount is appreciated. Again, grateful for you all coming here. Grateful Phil took time to come. I know this is his third stop at least today. Richfield, and then was it Bountiful? And now back here. It's been a busy day, and I'm certain it's not going to let up for a while. But Phil really can lead the charge. We hope that all of you have come with questions that you want to know the answers to for your gubernatorial candidate. And without further ado, I'll turn the time over to Phil, let him present his platform, and then answer questions. And we can go as long as we'd like. So let's make sure to ask what we'd like. So welcome, Phil.
Thank you. Well, it's so good to be with you guys tonight. Thank you. And I'm always really humbled by people that would take time out of their, especially a Saturday evening, Easter weekend, nonetheless. And so I want to be very respectful of your time, and I really want to answer questions. I want to be, completely transparent, honest, and have a good discussion. Typically, I'm wearing a blazer, but I went to this grand opening in Richfield this morning of the Utah beef processing plant. It's a new meat processing. I see a few people nodding, so some of you heard about it. And it's an unusual thing to have a processing plant opening up. Most of our processing plants have been bought by China, shut down if they're in Utah, or moved, to more centralized locations. And so to have this little processing plant, they can do about 250 beef a week, as compared to some of the big processing plants in the Midwest that are doing 10,000 a day. So this is really, really tiny compared with the major plants, but just perfect for a little town like Richfield. And really, really bold of the owners to say we're gonna do this. I love and so as I was walking out, I put on the vest and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna wear this today. I feel more comfortable kind of dressed this way, and it also gives me a chance to talk about what they're doing down there. Let's see. A couple of things, I guess. First of all, Chad and Misty, thank you so much for opening up your home and letting us come here. I'm Phil Lyman. My wife couldn't come tonight, Jody. We have 5 kids and 17 grandkids. All of our kids are off out of the house, so I'm a CPA. That's what I do. We live in Blanding. About 2 years ago now, coming up on 2 years, my 2 oldest boys both moved back at the same time. My oldest is an orthopedic surgeon, and his little brother is a family dog, so we're very proud of him. They're very tall, good-looking, nice people. And that's just my unbiased opinion, but when they came back to Blanding, what was so gratifying was we didn't ever raise our kids to come to Blanding because it's got limited opportunities, and we know that. But they wanted their kids to have the same kind of experience growing up that they had, and that's kind of what we do as parents. We do things not so much for ourselves, but for our children. And as I go around, I think a big difference between me and Spencer Cox is our vision of what the American dream is. Because to me, the American dream is to have a house and a family, kids that like each other, people that take care of each other, take care of your parents, look after each other, have a nice community, be able to go and play baseball. But as I've been closer to the House of Representatives and the leadership up there, it seems like it's all about billions of dollars and thousands of jobs and massive development. And that seems to be what the American dream is to them. It's like, oh, we got this, this guy's worth $16 billion and he's building this plant in Utah. What could be better than that? And I think, well, maybe the mom down the street who's trying to, raise her kids and just make a living. I really do think that's the American dream. And at the end of the day, as I drive around the state, I have lots of windshield time, lots of time to think, and I think, that the planet is what it is, and it's a beautiful planet, and it's ours, and we have the privilege of being here and enjoying it. I don't know what you could ask more than that. And especially in America. And when we look at the founding fathers, they felt that way. Can you guys hear me in the back? Am I speaking loud enough? They felt that way. And when you read the preamble of the Constitution, I'll give a little preview of that too. So with my two boys, when they came back, they brought 8 grandkids with them, and then had one more, so we got 9 grandkids there. But my wife said, I want to teach my grandkids about the Constitution. She had been to a meeting with me, and she was kind of inspired, and so she said, I'm going to start a little thing with my granddaughters first, because the boys are just wild. But so with my granddaughters first, we're between the ages of 6 and 9. And she said, I'm going to call it Cookies in the Constitution. I renamed it the Cousin Caucus, and so she calls it Cookies in the Constitution. But as I watched my granddaughters memorize and recite the preamble of the Constitution, it just really impacts you when you see your own posterity like quoting these things. Things like establishing justice. That was really important to our founding fathers, to establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That's the part that I always come back to. Is that's what this is about. That's what America is about, is securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Parents care about their kids more so than the school district, more so than the governor, more so than the head of the health department. And so during COVID, as we watched some of the measures that were pushed onto families, it was an affront to the parents. And those who felt most offended went to their school board meeting to say, I don't like this. I don't like that my kids are being forced to wear a mask or forced to deal with critical race theory or genderism or whatever it was in their classrooms. I don't like this. And the response from the school boards to some of those was to prosecute the parents, to label them as domestic terrorists. And we got that straight from Merrick Garland at the very top. And in that situation, you say, okay, I have in my vision a scenario where we care about individual rights, we care about our kids. As parents, I'm going to be supported in that role. And as a state, we would support the parents, and we'd expect the federal government to support statehood, parenthood, personhood. And all of that was turned on its head. And we're like, who are these people? Who are these people that think that they can take over that role? So we were in 2022 in the legislative session. We were having this big, I guess it was 2021, when they were going to unmask. Everybody could, okay, you can take your masks off now, except the kids. The kids have to keep their masks on. And I was arguing so with everything I had on the floor of the House and in the legislature. I should give a little bit more, but so I'm in the legislature currently, and I was trying to propose an amendment because what the law said was, if there is a direct health threat, then the health department has the authority to force treat, quarantine, isolate, and so I pulled that up and I said, it says if there's a direct health threat, and when I go to the definition of that, there's Utah didn't have one, but there's other places that did. Stanford University, Johns Hopkins University. This is what it says as a direct health threat, and these kids do not qualify. So how do you have the authority to do what you're doing to people? And they said, oh, the law didn't say we couldn't do it in the absence of that. It just says we can do it if this exists, but it didn't say we can't do it otherwise. So there's basically saying, the legislature, you said we could do basically anything we want, and this is what we're going to do. A mom called me from Kanab. She was there at the elementary school. I get a call. She said, I'm here at the school. My daughter, I filled out a religious exemption. I filled out a medical exemption. They will not let her go to class. She's 7 years old. They will not let her go to class, second grade. And I said, well, let me talk to the principal, because he was there. So I get on, and it's my district. These are my friends. They're, I look after them and legislate. So it's not like we're enemies. And I'm saying, well, you should let her go to class. Oh, I can't let her go to class. I can't do that. And I said, well, you should let her go to class. I mean, what's going to happen? Just let her go. Just do it. And he's like, oh, no, I can't do that. I've got to talk to the superintendent. And he said, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him to come in. I said, okay. So I wait for a few minutes, and I'm on the phone with the superintendent. I said, just let her go to class. It's okay. She's not going to hurt anybody. And I said, and I apologize on behalf of the legislature. I apologize that we've passed legislation that the health department thinks they have authority. But I promise you, so this is what I said to the superintendent, I promise you that mom has more authority over that little girl than the director of the health department or the governor or anybody else. Just let her go. And he's like, I'm going to have to get with the director of the health department, something to that effect. And I said, well, tomorrow morning there's going to be a story. And I said, this isn't a threat. I'm not saying I'm going to call anybody. I'm not. But tomorrow morning there's going to be a story. And I'll say, in Kane County, either they found a way to accommodate this girl and her legitimate exception, or that they didn't. And then we actually did get the director of the health department on. I got him, and it wasn't while I was on that phone call. And I said, this is the situation. And as he talked to me, I realized that he was in tears. The director of the health department was in tears telling me that little girl should be going to school. And he said, I know I'm the face. I know I am the face of these mandates. These are not coming from me. And he couldn't really go any further, but basically he was saying, the governor is pushing me to do these things. I know I shouldn't be mandating this, but I have no choice. Well, the next day, there was a story in the paper, and it was how Kane County found a way to let this girl go to class. They found an exemption, and all the parents flooded in. They did an exemption, and Iron County did an exemption, and the other school districts started to follow. And I was like, thank you. Thanks for standing up. You know, disobedience to tyranny is obedience to God. You cannot go along and say, well, I didn't have any choice. Sorry, I had to, put your kids in masks. Now, that was all during this legislative session while we're trying to get these things through. I knew there was money that was tied to this, but I looked, and it looked like there was $128 million in ESSER funds. And this is what I found, was $128 million of ESSER funds. That's elementary school and secondary education relief money. I found out more recently that it was closer to $1 billion in ESSER funds. And the condition that was in that contract was that the kids had to stay masked till the end of the school year. What we were telling everybody, what the legislators were being told, what the children were being told, is if you don't wear a mask, you're going to end up killing grandma and grandpa. Who wants that? Do you really want this on your head? I mean, honestly, we're telling second graders this. You don't want that. We've got to be good citizens. We're going to all wear our masks. And one of my friends, they lived in Hawaii, and the teacher would put up a gold star if you were vaccinated, and not if you weren't. So it's like, okay, all the vaccinated kids can come here, and the unvaccinated kids, you've got to stay over here. And I mean, talk about this like mind-blowing Marxist utopian experience that we were going through. Which I guess, I guess I'll just pivot a little bit and tell you about my own experience. There's a few people that were asking questions before. I want to get to questions pretty quickly. So as a CPA in my little firm in Blanding, Utah, we were involved in some really significant companies that we started up there. Utah Navajo Health System started in my office with a client of mine, and my dad passed away. I'd gone to work there right out of school. My dad passed away really young. I was really there for an internship. I thought, well, maybe this was God's way of getting me to Blanding so that I could help take care of my mom when he died. So I stayed and I ran the firm, and it was stressful, and I was young. I graduated from BYU, so I figured I could take on any problem in the world, but very naive. And there was a period of time I was waking up in cold sweats, worrying about making payroll, figuring out how to help clients, and dealing with the IRS and things like that. And one morning I woke up and I just had this overwhelming feeling of kind of this, oh ye of little faith. And the impression I had was, you're obviously a good accountant. And there are people all around you who obviously need some help. Stop worrying about the money. It's not about financial parameters. Go and help. And I did. And within months, we started up this little diabetes control project that turned into Utah Navajo Health Systems, which now is the biggest employer in the whole southeast region down there in 4 states. And my son came back to work for him. So it's like sometimes you do cast your bread on the water and it comes back to you in ways that you didn't really anticipate. Another little company that started up. I had a client who had some airplanes and was trying to get into air ambulance, and I contacted his son and said, "You really, really ought to come back. Your dad wants you here." Some other people were wanting to buy the company. I'm looking back at Jasmine because it's her family, the Reds and the Hunts, but John Hunt, and I convinced his son to come back and buy that air ambulance. He was doing his MBA program, and I said, "Joe, I know you want to do big things. I know it's Blanding." He really was not wanting to come to Blanding. He didn't grow up there. He called it the B word. And I said, "I'll help you. I'll do this. Please. It would make your dad really happy. It would make me really happy." Anyway, that company has went international. One of the largest companies in Utah, revenue-wise, a few years ago, and he sold that company for a lot of money. And I'm very, very proud of that involvement coming out of that little town. As I was watching some of these things transpire, I was also watching industries get shut down. I was watching the Bureau of Land Management shut down the logging industry, which there was a lot of that going on when I first got to Blanding. Then they started going after the extraction industry, shutting down the extraction industry. San Juan County has 8% private property. Everything else is owned by the government. And then they started shutting down the cattle industry. And I'm watching these things happen, and I'm thinking, this is not the way. This is not the way this is supposed to go. That we're supposed to have the ability. If we live on this little island of private property in an ocean of public land, and all of a sudden you become a trespasser on the public land, it's like, what do? And you could just see this pressure on your little community. Like they're going to shut us down. I'm not sure where we're going to go. And as I'm watching the Bureau of Land Management, I'm seeing the collusion that's going on between them and the environmentalists. I'm saying that's not fair. This is like the referee on the same team as the other opposing team's coach. You guys are supposed to be neutral. You're supposed to set policy. But instead of setting policy, you're going on these junkets with these environmentalist groups, and then you come back here and you pass, or push efforts to get the cows off the ground, and I'm fighting for these things. And finally I decided, well, in 2009, they raided the community, 300 federal agents in a little town of 3,500 people. It was really, really devastating. And a good friend of mine took his life the next morning, happened to be Jasmine's father. And should not. I was not going to even say it, Jasmine, but so it had an effect. It's like, okay, this is not anecdotal. This is not something that, hey, did you hear this happen? It's like, no, I watched it happen. I watched this thing roll out, and I thought, I'm going to run for county commissioner, because the sheriff didn't stand up, the commissioners didn't stand up, nobody was there. And I've had a kind of a mantra in my life that is that honest people have rights too. And the only hope they have is that other honest people will stand up for them. So when I see my neighbors damaged unfairly, I feel like, well, I'm not going to sit back. It may be dangerous, but I'm not going to sit back. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to go say something. So I ran for commissioner. We started asking questions of the BLM. They couldn't answer any questions. All of the efforts to lock up Bears Ears was under the false allegations of protecting artifacts. They said there's rampant looting. I told the sheriff, you've got to prosecute. Sheriff, he was elected the same time I was. We've got to prosecute. We can't leave these people to the federal government. We've got to go. We've got to shut this down. He said, Phil, there are no cases. So I went to the BLM and said, can you tell us all this crisis that you're trying to prevent? Can you show the things? Finally, after 6 months, I got a list of citations that they had. They say there's 100,000 archaeological sites in San Juan County, and over 11 years they had 6 incidences. It was things like a dog was digging in a site, and they cited the owner of the dog. Hey, that's a site. It's not supposed to be there. Grandkids digging in a site, similarly. Some people that were gathering up what they call monkey marbles. That's a little geological formation that you're not supposed to pick up, but they were gathering up by the 5-gallon bucketfuls. None of these people from San Juan County. And you find out this is a narrative. This is a narrative to lock up the Bears Ears National Monument. Some of you may have heard of that. And what is the Bears Ears National Monument? Well, it happens to be some land that's very rich in uranium, very rich in oil and gas, lithium, rare earths. I mean, you name it. It's a really valuable spot. So then you find out this is not even about protecting artifacts. It's not about protecting nature. It's about locking up resources. And the money that's being funneled through to do that is coming straight out of, in this case, Switzerland. Hans-Georg Weiss that was giving money to SUA. He's also bailing out Russian oligarchs and taking over the world in all kinds of ways. And you're saying this is what we're watching. As a county commissioner, the first assignment I had was to go and help negotiate the uranium on the Arizona Strip, the moratorium. The government wanted to shut that down, and so for several months, all through 2010, I was negotiating on these things. We're talking. We get into 2011, and towards the end of 2011, one of the biggest companies that was there advocating and paying for lots of the buses to go out and tour and things like that came and said, we're not coming anymore. We sold. And I'm sitting across the table. Again, this is not anecdotal. I'm sitting across the table talking to this gentleman. He said, we sold our company. It's Uranium One. And I said, you sold your company? And he said, yeah, we sold to Russia. And I'm like, yeah, right. And he said, no, Hillary Clinton brokered the deal. Now you're really waiting for the punchline. It's like, because she's the Secretary of State at the time. And he said, no, Hillary Clinton brokered the deal. And we didn't know much about it. This was in December of 2011. Months go by, and you find out, a person by the name of Frank Giustra, Canadian financier, flying all over the world with Bill Clinton to buy up uranium assets all over the world for Vladimir Putin, because Vladimir Putin said, I want to control the uranium market. I want to control the nuclear energy market. And I have a lot of money, which that's all you need to say to Bill Clinton, and off they go, So Frank Giustra brokers the deal, makes $1 billion profit, donates $130 million to the Clinton Foundation. And the net result is people have their lives turned upside down. This is not about somebody that's breaking a law. This is about, we want your stuff, and we're going to do whatever it takes to justify the actions that we're going to take. Those are the things that just, it's like, this is not America. This is not the way this works. We're not going to do that. We ain't California. We ain't Massachusetts. We're Utah. It doesn't happen.
Shouldn't happen there either.
Yeah, it should not happen. So that's when you start saying, this shouldn't happen. This is wrong. I'm not going to put up with it. This community's not going to put up with it. We did a protest to voice our concern about the impending national monument. This is all under the Obama administration. No coincidence he takes office January 2009, and in June of 2009, we've had people's lives being destroyed. And then at the end of his term, he designates Bears Ears on his way out. But in the meantime, we do this protest, perfectly legal, call the BLM, give them 4 months notice. We're going to do this little event on a county road in Recapture Canyon, a mile from my front door. Very, very important to the people that they be heard. Can you come? Can you be there? Can you help explain? They didn't come. They sent some law enforcement people. Afterwards, I'm getting calls from the Bureau of Land Management saying, thank you. Thank you for such a peaceful event. Good job. Happened to come like 2 weeks after the Bundy event, so it was heightened. And so they were saying, thank you for, thanks. This could have been worse, and you handled it very well. 4 months later, I get a call from the Salt Lake Tribune saying, how do you feel about being charged federally? Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll have to get back to you. It hadn't hurt. 11 days went by before I finally got notification from the U.S. attorneys that I was being charged with with misdemeanor conspiracy to trespass for protesting. Yeah. So word to the wise, if you ever get charged federally and in the charge it says conspiracy to do anything, that just means you're going to jail, because they can prove conspiracy on virtually anything. In my situation, they spent a full day in federal court. They charged me and 4 other people, one of them being Jasmine's brother, Jay, good friend of mine. His crime, he's Dr. Red's son, and they didn't like him showing up at a protest, So they decided to charge him. We got the charges dropped on Jay, but 4 of us went to the whole distance. Anyway, there's somewhere I was going with that. We go through this whole court process. Oh, the Facebook thing. So a full day, and this guy's standing up, and he's from Alabama, so he has kind of a funny accent. He says, so this is how Facebook works. You got a cute kitty cat, and this guy really likes his cute kitty cat, so he puts up a picture. And then this other guy, he agrees. He thinks that is a cute kitty cat, so he shares it. And then the other guy, he really thinks that's cute, so he shares it to all of his people, and these people are liking it. So then he goes and he says, okay, and that's what Phil posted this, and then Trent liked it, and then this guy shared it, and then this guy shared something, and Phil liked it. And even though it was about girls basketball, you could see the conspiracy starting to form in Blanding. And I turned to my attorney and said, what country are we living in? And he's like, you don't speak in federal court. So it's like, but I'm just like, this is nuts. And we go through, and my attorney, when he gets up to question the BLM employee, said, so are you telling me that the BLM has a full-time social media investigator? And he says, well, actually, there's 2 of us. It's 2 full-time in Utah. So if you're posting on Facebook, if you say, hey, I caught 12 fish and 11 is the limit, you're indicting yourself. But anyway, 2 full-time. He said, well, how much time did you spend on this with Phil? And he said, well, all told, probably about 6 weeks. So I had a guy for 6 weeks looking through my social media, my Facebook stuff, and the evidence was sharing and liking posts that had nothing to do with recapture. So I got convicted and went to jail. They wanted 2 years. By the time I finally went to sentencing, 4 judges had recused because we said, we pointed out their conflict of interest, and they wanted to send me in for 2 years, but the judge finally said, well, I read the case, and this is absurd, and kind of reprimanded the federal agents and sentenced me to 10 days. So I did go to jail, Purgatory Correctional Facility. If any of you ever go there, it's a nice place.
Purgatory doesn't sound nice.
Purgatory, yeah. So some folks had asked earlier, can you kind of tell us a little bit about your mugshot? And so that's the mugshot story. As I was leaving the jail, the guard there, and it was very real. Getting booked into jail is not a pleasant experience. You hear certain stories, this person's got booked into jail and then they died. How could that happen? It's like, well, if you ever been booked into jail, you would probably understand. It's really, really stressful. But as I was leaving the jail, the guy said, so how was your stay? And I said, oh,
I think it's the millennium.
Compared to the last 18 months, this was the best 10 days of the whole experience, because it really was. It was like,
like the mint on the pillow.
Yeah. It's funny. So I don't like that my mugshot defines me, and I hope people, and it's out there. I had one before they were cool, by the way, before Trump got his. So yeah. But a friend of mine called the other day and he said, hey, we've got this BLM land that's going to be traded down here. It was the Sitla land. They're going to trade this off, and it's right by this state park. And he was telling me about the state park. He said, this is really a cool state park. They take such good care of it. Any state park, you go, they've got the bathrooms. You go, the showers, he said, the showers are amazing. They're not like prison showers. And he immediately said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, no, I have a perfect image in my mind of what you're talking about. So I ran for the state legislature not too long after getting done with that. I like to say I'm the only legislator in the history of Utah that was elected with a parole officer. So, and that was pointed out really strongly. Brian Malahy did a story. He said, lawbreaker turned lawmaker. And I called him up. I said, that's mine. I get to keep that title. I'm going to use that. All the while, embarrassed to have lost that case, embarrassed to have gone and fought a fight and then come out feeling like we should have won. We should have won. There was a fight that we should have won. It was embarrassing. About a year ago, maybe a year and a half, I was sitting in a committee meeting at the legislature, and I thought, you know what? guess I've got a mugshot. I guess I'll just do something with it. And a friend of mine that got 5 days, my sidekick, I pulled up his mugshot on my computer in the committee meeting, and I sent it off to Upwork and to somebody. Hey, can anybody make a coffee mug out of this? And so, like 10 minutes later, they're like, the guy's like, "How about this?" It's like, perfect. Let's do that. So I ordered 8 mugs, and I gave them to him. It was just before Christmas. I gave him his 8 mugs, and he loved it so much, and his family loved it. He ordered 40 more, and so I go, well, okay, I guess I'll throw my mug shot on some mugs. I gave them to my kids, and anyway, so leaned into it a little bit. After the 2020 election, when Trump was, it was apparent he was not going to be in the White House. I think unrightfully, I was upset with the way that whole thing played out. And someone had told me earlier on, he said, you can't get pardoned for a misdemeanor. And I just believed. I thought, oh well, I guess that's, you can't get pardoned for a misdemeanor. But the U.S. Attorney's Office, this is really turning into a long story. Thanks for bearing with me. I'll get to the governor part here. But at a particularly low point, and the U.S. Attorney's Office just kept coming at me and at me and at me and at me. And I thought, and the U.S. Attorney, the woman that was put over my case, had pictures of her at the Women's March wearing her pink bunny ear hat or whatever that is, and shirts saying, protect the Bears ears. I mean, this person hated my guts. And I told Jody, I said, they're just going to keep doing this. They're just going to keep doing this. And I had more empathy for Dr. Rick because he was going through similar stuff after winning his court case. And you really feel like, what do I do? And I thought, so I pulled down the application, and I thought, President Trump can pardon any dang person he wants. And so I pulled down the application. I started filling it out midnight one night. Got to a place where it said you've got to get some character references. So I texted Senator Lee and said, hey, would you consider being a character reference? I'm filling out the paperwork for a pardon. And he responded, and I thought it'd be a couple of days before he responded. And immediately I get a text back. Absolutely, 100%. Just text after text. We are on the side of the angels. You were treated unfairly. This was a travesty. I won't sleep till we get this done. And he didn't. He took that pardon application, and Jason Chaffetz was another one. And long story short, December 20th, 2020, I got a presidential pardon from Donald Trump. So. Whether it's a badge of honor or just whatever it is.
You have it with you?
I should have brought it. It's framed now. At the same time I got the coffee mug, I framed my pardon. Decided I'm just gonna own this a little bit. But yeah, I got the pardon. I got a call from Jason Chaffetz just one morning. He's like, hey, I just got off the phone with President Trump. And I was like, yeah. And he said, dude, you're getting a pardon. And I said, I have a phone number. He can call me. Why do I have to hear from Jason Chaffetz? And I'm always just like, oh man, come on, President Trump, call me. I could just because I wanted to say thank you so much, and not just for the pardon. In fact, really not for the pardon. What I really want to say thank you for, and I did get the opportunity previous to that, was for reducing the Bears Ears National Monument. He came in, he said that was a travesty, that was a total bow to the environmentalists, that was wrong, and he reduced the Bears Ears Monument. But he didn't stop there. He went and he reduced the Grand Staircase National Monument, which was huge. That's where. And so in the 4 years of Trump, we were able to go in and drill a bunch of wells, get a bunch of water wells out there. We were able to see what it looks like without the National Monument for grazing and production versus in the National Monument. It's given us tons of data, huge to get those monuments reduced. Of course, when Biden got in, he put them right back. A few weeks ago, Trump was in Las Vegas, and some of my friends sent a video that they had of him saying, he said, oh, you're from Utah? Isn't that where that monument was? They said, yeah, Bears Ears. And he said, yeah, and those idiots came out and took it back. And this is all in video. And he says, do you want me to reverse it? You want me to put it back? And they said, yeah. And he's like, you won't have to remind me. I'm going to do that on the first day. So I was like, wow. Yay. But that was my fight. The Bears Ears National Monument. It's in San Juan County. It's in my backyard. It was the fight. It was it was the observation of the collusion, of the bad policy that comes from that. And that, I guess, if there's a takeaway, it's that this type of collusion and corruption really leads to really bad policy that can really devastate people's lives. It's not trivial stuff. And then when I get in the legislature, I see the same types of things going on. Big corporations coming in and big lobbyists with access to the leadership, and they form these think tanks, and they go on junkets. They take people to China. They take people to all over the world, and they show them these amazing things. And it's like, hey, you're part of the club. You're part of the group that will help us pass this important legislation. And I call it the cool kids club. And what it is corruption. That's what's happening. And it's not smoky rooms and bags of cash. It's much worse than that. It's policy. Policy that favors those who are willing to play the game and excludes those who are not willing to play. And that's what I wanted to step in as a governor to try to affect that. I ran a few bills. I ran a bill that said if you're a lobbyist and running somebody's campaign, you can't also lobby that person. Mm. And what we had, honestly, was lobbyist firms coming in and saying, you don't like ranked choice voting? Well, we are going to take a candidate. We're going to fund him. We're going to install him into this position. We're going to help him lobby for that bill. And pretty soon, the legislators like, oh, this is sweet. I don't have to pay for my campaign. I don't have to do anything. They're doing everything for it. They were doing that at the county level with county clerks, things like that. That is the opposite of a Republican form of government. The opposite of preserving the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, securing the blessings of liberty, and that's what made me want to throw my hat in for the governor's race. I want to just read this. I could probably quote it, but this is just from the Declaration of Independence. And it's so good. And it says, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. For when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. So I saw earlier when they said, how many of you are delegates? And a lot of hands. How many are you? Can you raise your hands again if you're delegates? That's a lot of delegates. That's what this whole process is about, is saying it's people that recognize it's my right and it's my duty to do something about it. So you go to your caucus meeting, next thing you know, they elect you as a precinct chairman or something, or a state delegate, and you're off to the races. So thank you for what you're doing there. I'll try to just kind of wrap up here a few things. If I'm the governor, I've told several legislators, I won't sign any of your bills until you bring me one that repeals SB 54. SB 54 is the signature ballot, and it was implemented after Mike Lee ousted Bob Bennett. The money didn't like that. They didn't like that someone could come from nowhere and just win based on their principles. So SB 54 is turned into a money game. I want to institute a Secretary of State because I've got real concerns about our elections. Chad's been fighting the fight. Thank you, Chad. There aren't very many attorneys that will take on election stuff, no matter how much there aren't very many legislators that will take it on. It's one of those people look at it, and legislators they want wins. They're looking for something that's like, well, I could run this and it would look good and people would be happy, my district would be happy. And if I take on elections, I'm just going to get beat up by the governor and the lieutenant governor. And so thanks, Chad, for taking on that case. And but yeah, Secretary of State. If we had a Secretary of State, then that person would be not beholden to the governor. They'd be elected as a separate office. And I think they would be thrilled to have an audit of the elections. So yeah, Secretary of State I think is really important. I think a lot about these things. So if I was going to summarize this, I would, as a governor, I would scrutinize, I would optimize, I would minimize, and I would privatize. That's on the executive branch. The executive branch is huge, and there's lots of things that could be done there. But scrutinize is the first thing. These we need to go in and say, is this necessary? What are you doing? Why are you getting so much money? I get calls every day from state employees saying, kind of, don't let anybody know that I'm calling you, but this is what's happening in our state agency. One guy said, we got $1.7 million of one-time money. We don't need one-time money. We need ongoing to do these things. He said, I don't have any choice but to spend that. So he said, we're going to find something. We'll do the best we can with it. But he said, it's such bad policy. Another person called and talks about the hiring. They just hired 4 more people to do this job when all we really needed was this job. But it's like, well, you just take it, you run with that. I watched it happen in the legislature. We allocated, in 2022, we allocated $40 million to save the Great Salt Lake because apparently $40 million could make a dent in it. They turned around after the session was over. They opened up a bid and they gave the $40 million to the Audubon Society and the Nature Conservancy District to go and buy the water shares of farmers.
Wow.
And whatever else they needed to do with that. When they came back to report a few months later in the committee, I was there and I said, so, and the director of the Audubon Society was there. And I said, where I come from, the Audubon Society is not our friends. They sue our counties, they shut down our businesses, they close our roads, and we, as a legislature, we gave them $40 million. I mean, how long can they keep doing that? And a few of the other legislators were like, what? We just gave them $40 million. I said, no, that was last year we gave them $40 million. We're just barely getting a report about it. And I said, I guarantee you, had this been in the bill that came from the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and the Governor's office, a must-pass bill, had people known that that's what was going to happen, they would not have passed that bill. And I said, if the state wants to put farmers out of business, couldn't we just send DNR out to buy their water shares? And it was a facetious question, but the reason, when you look into it, the reason we don't go through the DNR to do that is because the DNR doesn't have a pipeline to put that money back into circulation, that it comes back into campaign accounts. And that is what happens, and you can track it. You can go to followthemoney.com and you can see, oh, this corporation made a $140,000 campaign contribution and they got a $16 million contract. This one did this. They made a campaign contribution and they got this huge contract. The beautiful thing about a state of emergency is that you can go to no bid contracts. So it's not a coincidence that Utah was under state of emergency for 1.5 years with COVID, or 2 years, whatever. We go straight to a drought state of emergency, that from there straight to a flood state of emergency, and anything else that will come along. Now I think I've done a pretty good job of screaming that from the House of the floor of the House of Representatives, and the last one that came was the governor said, I want a 90-day flood emergency. And I came with an amendment and said, we're coming back in 30 days. Let's amend this and give him a 30-day state of emergency. And in 30 days, if he needs more, we'll come back and we'll extend it. We'll do another state of emergency. But why 90 days? We don't even know if we're going to be having massive flooding. And we didn't. But he had the 90 days. And the next day in the paper was an op-ed from the governor saying a few, what did he call us? Like small-minded legislators opposed this state of emergency. But we got it done anyway with overwhelming support. And I want to say overwhelming support from everybody, including me. Just because I proposed to limit it doesn't mean that I voted against it. I voted for your state of emergency. You got what you wanted, but you still have to come back and disparage those that suggested that maybe you not have like that unlimited power. The other thing that I watched happen just this last session was the governor proposed that he appoint the attorney general instead of an elected office. Well, and then a bill came out that was proposing the attorney general, the treasurer, and the state auditor all be appointed positions. The governor also suggested that the state school board be appointed. Someone asked me that today about that in Bountiful. You know, what's your reaction to that? And I said, any person who exhibits king-like desires like that should never hold public office.
Absolutely.
which is not a personal bash on the governor. That's a scary thing to me. I look at that, it's like, that is the opposite of a Republican form of government. That's the opposite of government, accountable to the people. So, a few things there. Let's see. I talked about elections. I'll talk a little bit about immigration, and we'll jump to questions. I'm sorry if you just Chad say, hey, dude,
This is your show.
Okay.
Questions,
So I came out, saying it's not right that Utah should be a sanctuary state.
Right.
Trent Staggs had come out with his story saying, did you see this? And of course, the governor didn't want to hear that.
So we all got emails. Right?
Yeah. So I gave my rundown of what the sanctuary state is. This is a sanctuary state. We are designated by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, said Utah is a sanctuary state, but it's much more nuanced than that. ICE has detention facilities, and if you want to detain a non-citizen, you have to put them in an ICE detention facility. Well, they don't have any in Utah, so they subcontract that out to the county jails. But if you have a county jail and you want to detain a non-citizen, you have to meet their list of requirements, which is impossible to meet. And it is like going to the Four Seasons if you're going to meet their requirements. And so the sheriffs arrest somebody for breaking the law. They take him to court. The judge finds out that they are a non-citizen. He knows he can't detain him because they don't have a detention facility. So they're out the front door faster than the cop is able to fill out his paperwork and leave. And ICE comes and says, oh, you guys are not detaining. You must be a sanctuary state, and we're going to give you that label. And it's not something that we ask for. It's kind of like saying we're going to make you a national monument. It's like, oh well, it's not a badge of honor. But then you say, okay, well, what could the state possibly do about that? The federal government says you have to meet these requirements. Nobody meets the requirements, so obviously you can't detain them, right? Is that what you would say if you were the sheriff? So what I say is, if our jails are good enough for our citizens, they're good enough for our non-citizens. If someone wants to break the law in Utah, they can go sit in jail like anybody that breaks the law, right?
Yeah.
And if you did that, the sanctuary state status would go away. The word on the street with all of the illegal aliens who really like coming to Utah, why? Because you can come there, especially if you're a criminal, because you can go there and you're not just a non-citizen, you're a super citizen. They won't put you in jail. They can't. That's their thing. And for the record, detentions, non-citizen detentions have dropped 67% in the last 3 years since Governor Cox took office. That tells you that it's not because we have fewer non-citizens. We don't have fewer of them committing crimes. It's because of an executive level decision that's gone down through the ranks. It's telling judges, telling facilities, let them go. Just let them go. So that's bowing to another federal dictate. Okay, I think I've kind of
While you're on immigration,
Yeah.
Because I think this is a tremendous concern. There was a thing on the news the other day about a third of the students at Harriman High are illegals.
What?
And that blows my mind. One, we've got one street up, we've got a house being rented, and we drop off people at 3 a.m.
here in this neighborhood.
One street up.
I heard this everywhere I go. I hear this
And
similar story.
it's scary. We don't know what's going to happen. What can we do as a state? Because certainly we can enforce our laws. As governor, what can you do to help us rid ourselves of those who shouldn't be here?
Well, the key word in illegal immigrant is illegal. So right off the bat, somebody's breaking the law. It's like, that's illegal. I'm a big proponent of proportionality. I talk about proportionality in a lot of things. For example, I ran a bathroom bill. It was the best bathroom bill this last time, but because it said, if you're a boy, you use a boy's bathroom. If you're a girl, you use a girl's bathroom. Locker room, same thing. End of story. Let's just leave it at that. No real prosecution. So that's the proportionality. It's like, if you're, I was at the Capitol while this session was going on. I was there with my intern. A person came by, beautiful high heels, a beautiful dress, and a beautiful long beard. And I honestly, I looked at that individual. I'm human. I like people. And I thought, that's a little bit of a dilemma. I don't know where that individual would want to go to the bathroom, but if he walked in, sorry, misgendering, if the person walked into my bathroom, I'd probably feel a little bit uncomfortable. And if you walked into the women's bathroom, somebody might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So it's like, well, and that person has rights, right? That person has rights. But so does the little girl who wants to use the bathroom without having to deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the laws that we pass. So my bill would say, that's the law. If you decide you're going to break it, you're not going to be like tased and dragged out like as if you were a sticker in a committee hearing that said something controversial like happened. No, this is going to be like jaywalking. And I use that example a lot. It's like jaywalking. It's like if you don't want to walk through the crosswalks, just know that that's where you're supposed to go. And if you get run over, it's a liability question. Anyway, what did you ask me? I'm off on this.
What do you do?
Can we exercise our laws?
Proportionality. Thank you. It's been a long day. Proportionality. So not all illegal people are created equal. A young mother who truly is a refugee, who's honestly fleeing a dangerous situation. I have a hard time as a human being saying, deport that mom and her kids, get them out of here, send them back to the Darien Gap. Who cares, versus a predator who, yeah, I won't get graphic, but we've seen really horrific things. These some of these young men that come here there is not any good intentions. They're here for crime, because of crime. Through the cartel, they've got a quota. They're getting their fentanyl out on the streets. They're doing all these things. Those are the ones that I would deport first, I guess, Chad. What could you do as a governor? It's like people that break the law go to jail. They don't come out of jail. They get deported. ICE comes and picks them up. They probably take them to San Francisco. Something. But what should happen is that they should go back to. And this is where Donald Trump said, I'm going to implement a program of mass deportation. And of course, the left comes out, oh, he wants to deport, legal citizens. He wants to deport anybody that's not the same color as him. And it's like intelligent policy can distinguish between someone who's a refugee who really needs sanctuary. It's like, this is dire versus someone who's taking advantage of that system. So deportation is the answer, and those that are arrested and in our jails would be the first ones to go.
How do you do that? How do you get with our department heads? How do you get with the law enforcement and make that happen when ICE just says you can't do that and turns them loose?
Yeah, that's when as a governor you say, pound sand, ICE, we're detaining these people. And it happens all the time. Colorado says, pound sand, federal government, we're going to let people smoke marijuana. Texas said, pound sand, federal government, we're going to protect our borders. We have a right to do it. We're being invaded. And I always say, whether it's an invasion of your southern borders or an invasion of your second grade classrooms, states that think that they are subservient to the federal government, well, they may as well be subservient to the federal government. States that are willing to stand up and say, no, obviously no.
Are sheriffs willing to do that?
Yeah.
If they have the backing of the chief executive, who is the governor. And I've been through that process. And you get there. A sheriff who is going to take a stand on something like that, if the governor's not behind him, they don't get punished by the federal government. They lose their post-certification. That's a state certification, and that's what they fear the most. Mm-hmm. All you'd have to do as a governor is say, of course you're not going to lose your post-certification. These are criminals. Our job is to protect our citizens, the health, safety, and welfare of our communities. That's the oath that they took. Mm-hmm. So do that and let the consequences follow. If the federal government wants to sue us, then let them sue us. But we're not going to let our community.
Is that something that you'd be willing to work with the legislature on to get a bill in place to protect them from that kind of situation? Because obviously, as the executive branch, you don't have, I would say, permanent law control, if that makes sense, right? You have directional abilities, but in order for that to really take a stand and be continuous throughout, something has to pass through the legislature.
Well, this is the beauty of this particular issue. This is an executive branch function, all the way down. there is a judicial branch that is not the executive branch, but who appoints the judges? It is the executive. The sheriffs answer to the executive. They answer up through the attorney generals. The attorney general could do this independent of the governor, but then he'd be fighting in this administration. He'd be fighting. So this is an executive function, which would be really a beautiful thing to see a governor just say it. And again, perception is reality, and if we start detaining criminals who are non-citizens, then criminals who are non-citizens would say maybe Utah's not the place to go.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to kind of go around the room and get a few questions so we get a flavor of this. But yeah, back here first.
You had mentioned kind of a disdain for SB 54, yet it looks like you've checkmarked for getting signatures.
Right.
How do you reconcile that?
Someone said, well, isn't that hypocritical to get signatures? And I said, well, I think it felt hypocritical to me to say that I was actually running to win the office, not knowing what in advance what's going to happen with the caucus system, not knowing where that's going to go. 4 years ago, we didn't even end up with the caucus night. We didn't end up with a state convention. And I felt like it would be hypocritical to take people's campaign money and not keep my options open in the event that the caucus went sideways. We feel good about the caucus now. We feel like that it went pretty well. We've done it to pull the delegates. I've always said I'm not paying for signatures, and honestly, you can't really get there without paying for them. So, that's my answer. Is I talked to Senator Lee about this because he runs the same gamut, and he said, well, it seems odd if you're serious about the office that you would unilaterally disarm before you even go to battle, and that's kind of what I thought. I like the option. I sent a video of a football option play to one of my friends that was saying that, and it's very clear. The quarterback rolls out. There's one defender he's got to decide who he's going to go for. As soon as he you pump that way, and if he commits, then you keep the ball and you go up the field, and that's the way I felt with this. I'm very, very serious about winning this election. I would never run as a message. It's not my point. I really believe I can win. We are dropping the signature path, and that announcement, I think, went out officially today, but about 2 weeks ago after the caucus night, we said we were going to drop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the state of Utah has had a very long historical run of corrupt governors and lieutenant governors, craziness. So it's a breath of fresh air to have you running, and I hope you win. One of the things that it's also connected to is the National Governors Association, which they seem to have deep roots in, and is one of the most corrupt groups in America that's caused all of our problems during COVID. It's connected with Bill Gates. I know Christine Nome has completely, from what I understand, she doesn't have anything to do with it. And I know we put, I don't know if it's hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in dues and fees to that association. But is there a way that you can pull us out of that so that we no longer have to be associated to the NGA?
Yeah, he's the president of the National Governors Association. I think it's the title. So did you hear the question back there? No. It's like, could Utah pull out of the National Governors Association because it is the source of so many
of our issues
and our policies and I appreciate bringing that up. The Carnegie Institute created the National Governors Association back in 1906 or something,
right?
And they're still very involved in it. So about a year ago, I was looking up "Disagree Better." Where did that? Yeah. Where did that come from? So there's a woman by the name of Rachel Kleinfeld, and she's been preaching about disagree better for quite a while. She's a Carnegie Institute fellow. She came to present it to the National Governors Association, and she said, and in a long interview that I watched with her, she said she's talking about disagree better. So it's not Spencer's creation. Mm-hmm. It's the Carnegie Institute.
Helps keep it going.
And it is a manipulative Marxist. Another way to say it would say, compromise your values. If you want to get along, with
yeah.
What's that?
Keep your mouth shut.
That too. But she's on there saying, we need the Disagree Better campaign. She's a flaming left-wing Democrat. She says we need ranked choice voting and more flavors of Republicans. that's the only way the Democrats are going to get in charge of this mess that the Republicans are making of America. And she said it worked in Alaska, and it'll work everywhere else. So when you see ranked choice voting, just know that's coming from
NGA.
Yeah, National Governors Association, from the Carnegie Institute, and the objective is stated clearly: we need Democrats in charge. So what we need is to trifurcate the Republican Party into segment them and do ranked choice voting.
So can you, like, if you're governor, could you say we're not part of the NGA anymore, or is that something that has to go through, I don't know, like other people that make that decision? Like, who is it that makes that decision?
So the question is, as governor, can I just withdraw from the National Governors Association? But the truth is, I don't know how they could keep you from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I followed. I look at the minutes of the National Governors Association just to see
what they're doing.
Is Christy Noem there? Because she's one that I follow really close. I've never seen her go to one of the
I heard she refuses to be part of it, but I don't know that officially.
Yeah. I think all 50 governors are listed as members of the National Governors Association. If you put up a protest and say, please take me off the list, that'd be a good thing to do. So
yeah, maybe you can start a trend.
So Phil, you talked about Alaska. One of the things that happened in Alaska was their multi-party primary, or jungle primary. Representative Ward put forth a bill this last session wanting Utah to use that same model. I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, so Representative Ward put forth a bill to basically have an open primary. Is that what it?
Yeah, jungle primary.
Jungle primary. I like that term. I don't think I'd heard that before. But a horrible bill. It's a horrible idea. And you know, in Utah, I think it's on my website. It says, you know, this is not about Democrats versus Republicans. This is about Republicans and Democrats who run as Republicans. Our biggest gripe is, and I don't want to use the term rhino. I think that's not accurate. What we really have are Democrats who run as Republicans.
Right.
And I know this is being recorded, so so I'm not trying to like pull any punches or anything else, but that's a Democrat bill. It's just there's no other way around it. So yeah, it's a bad idea. Did you have your hand?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
My name is Leah. Hi.
Hey, Leah.
I may not be serious, but maybe I am serious. I want names of that cool kids club.
The names?
Oh, I want names.
Did you have names?
They used to operate under the Buckshot Caucus, but no, it's you would probably be able to tell just by kind of looking at it.
So you've never really been a part of the cool kids club?
No. I don't want to sound selfish. I really am there to tear down power, not to build it up. I love county.
Gosh, I've heard that somewhere.
I love county government. I like moms and dads in charge. I'm a libertarian. It's like intervention by the government is. I probably go too far libertarian, so I have to always like watch my, policy, because if you really were the governor, you would probably be fairly careful about the libertarian things that you really implement. But yeah, at the end of the day, I like local government.
Sorry, this is something completely off topic, but so Governor Cox did come and speak to a bunch of Polynesians.
Yeah.
And I think he was kind of, he said, I want you guys to know how many bills your legislators have passed. It's like, it passed these many, they've approved these many bills. And that's all he said. And I don't think that Polynesians necessarily know what's going on. We should, but we don't all the time. And I got up and I asked a question and I said, well, yeah, they may have passed it, but you get to sign them. You get to sign them into law. So how many of those did you sign? And he said, well, in the end.
So that it's kind of a weird dance that goes on during politics time. It's like I passed this many bills, and then people are like, well, we hate bills. Oh, I voted against all of And the governor's out there saying, I signed the most strict bill on Second Amendment rights. I passed the most stringent bill on right to life. I did this. I passed the biggest tax cuts. And it's like, well, the legislature did all of that. Congratulations for signing a bill that was veto-proof, but you did that. But the one that really gripes me right now is his coming out so hard against DEI. It's like, well, what about signing a compact as lieutenant governor as you're taking office, saying first thing he did, and Utah we will embrace DEI. We are going anti-racist in Utah. We're going to correct the systemic racism that defines Utah. And now he's saying, oh, DEI, that's evil. It's like I ask people all the time. I say, what? Can you tell me what the governor's platform is?
Fry sauce.
Whatever he wants.
Fry sauce, I could go. I get
Stay weird. How about that one? Stay weird.
Yeah. So these things, and again, it's not a bash session. It's people need to recognize what they have, and especially in the primary election as we come up, that's going to be the real challenge. Is Utah is not the type of state to really scrutinize a governor.
I have a couple of things, but first of all, I want everybody to know here, if you want to look at Phil's voting record, that just says a lot. I've been really part of a group called Restore Utah's Flag. I did not know just how corrupt. I did. This is the second time I've been elected a delegate. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, so I'm glad to see you all here, because we have got to be the voice of our constituents and all the people in our precinct and in our, but Phil, goes out on a limb to help us, even though he knows they're against him. And it's just, to me, it was just a breath of fresh air. But I just want to know, and I don't know if everybody realizes just how bad Utah is. If we get if Spencer Cox is our governor for another 4 years, we will be no different than California or Oregon, any of these states. We're like right there. We are right there. And we have got to get the word out. I talk to people at the grocery store. I talk to them at the gas station. Anywhere you go, we have got to spread the word, because he's got all the money and he's putting out all the ads, and it's like, oh, we're a no-kill state, so he'll do something nice, and somebody will say, I really like him. I don't like pets getting killed. But then he's got 30 other things that are destroying our state, so that don't get out, So we need to get the word out. But what can we do, Phil, to help? Is there anything, you're saying you're not getting signatures now, but what can we do to spread the word about Phil Lyman? Because we got to have you. That's all there is to it.
Well, I appreciate the confidence. To me, it's the message. It really is about the message. And now people need to understand, and we're waking up, January 6th is the wake-up call to people. They're looking and saying, maybe the federal government really did weaponize. Maybe this really was a setup. We're looking at COVID. It's like, maybe the vaccine really won't keep you from ever getting COVID. Maybe that was a false narrative. Maybe climate change is not a real crisis. Maybe we're being manipulated. Maybe gender fluidity in elementary school is evil or critical race.
Out the word baby out front of that.
Thank you. Yeah. Critical race theory to me is one of the most evil things that you could ever do to a child, is to teach them that you are either inherently racist or you're inherently a victim. Mm-hmm. How horrible. What I honestly cannot think of something worse to go into these schools. Yet it's there. It's in the curriculum. I talked to a 5th grade teacher in San Juan County, and these are the teachers that I trust, I love. And she says, so I'm supposed to do this survey at the end of the school year, and it's got all this CRT nonsense in it. She said, I told them I won't do it. And they came back and said, well, nobody really wants to do it, but we got to turn in something, because if you don't turn it in, we don't get our funding. Which maybe brings me to the next point. 29% last year of Utah's budget was federal money. In the last 3 years, we've gone from $22 billion budget to almost a $30 billion budget. $9 billion of it is federal money. I'm not saying that we would give up all the federal money, but if we did, we'd only be back about to where we were 3 years ago, which was not bad. Now we got $2.5 billion surpluses, and we pat ourselves on the back for doing $175 million tax cut here and there. And at the same time, how many of you feel like your taxes have been reduced over the last 3 years? So they say, we've cut your taxes by $1.5 billion, and everybody's supposed to like, well, clap, yay. But who feels it? I don't feel it. I watch my property taxes double. I watch my car registration goes up.
So do you just withdraw from accepting federal money? How does that, because I have heard some stuff about that. So, and it gives us back the power as the state to not be emboldened, not to be controlled.
Our schools only, I was told by state and school board member, we only have like less than 9% of the money comes from the federal government.
Yeah.
We could do without that. It's only 9%.
We honestly could do without it. And we during COVID, we shut down the economy, $250 billion economy in Utah. For about $2.5 billion of money that came to the state. Public money is not the same as private money. $2.5 billion might be a lot of money to you. To the state, all that is money to expand the footprint of government a little bit more, hire some more people. It's more of a liability. It's like, okay, now we got this in. Now we're going to maintain all these things going forward. We can't cut it down. The federal money stops coming in, yet we've built up this dependency. So it's a really slippery slope when you start taking the federal money. And yes, you can say no to it. What would we get if we said no to that? We'd get the right maybe to manage our forests, which would give us better water flow, which would take care of the Great Salt Lake, which would, it's like,
Independence. We don't want to be
it's almost like being free, if we said that. And people say, well, they're going to give it to somebody. Might as well give it to us. And it's like, again, that's the public mentality thing, and the private person thinks, yeah, how could we give that up? But you've got to step back and say, okay, we're a $250 billion economy. If the federal government was not in control of so much, could we be a $350 billion economy? I love nuclear energy. I love energy in general, energy independence.
Drill, baby, drill.
I have it. Drill, baby, drill. Where there's stuff to drill. Dr. Mehmet from BYU comes up to the legislature. I do a Yellow Cake Caucus. I call it the Yellow Cake Caucus because it focuses on energy. And I've done it every week of the legislature since I've been up there. It's a beautiful, beautiful caucus. So he comes up to talk about thorium. He said there's enough thorium in Utah to power the United States for 10,000 years.
Wow.
And enough thorium.
Talk a little bit more. I don't think people understand what thorium really is and how great that is.
It's a fabulous thing. And the byproduct from thorium is medical isotopes that are a miracle in themselves. So it's one of the most plentiful resources on the planet, and Utah happens to have a lot of thorium. It's not like uranium, although it goes into a nuclear process. I can't really explain.
Yeah, its half-life is only 100 years, and it's fine, versus 10,000 years.
You can't make a nuclear bomb out of it.
Yeah, there's so many great things with that.
So, and this is Dr. Mehmet's vision. The immense value of the medical isotopes, and you can only get them from one source, and it's spent thorium. You can't take thorium and say, well, we'll just do this and create an isotope. You've got to go and you've got to run it through the energy depleting process. So honestly, if you want to say we're in the medical isotope business and the byproduct is free energy, that's almost what we're going to get to with thorium. Where was I going with that?
It's not new either. It's old science. It's not
Thank you.
breaking age.
Thank you. Yeah. So we got excited about nuclear energy. I'll come over to you next. I don't want your arm to fall asleep. So in the Yellow Cake Caucus, we're studying about all of these different things and bringing these things, having the presentations. Came up that to get thorium processing, it's pretty straightforward. The plants, are pretty straightforward. We got the technology. We wanted to get the first small form nuclear reactor. It was going to be fission, not thorium, but we were going to get that. That kind of fell apart. But Dr. Mehmet said they needed to do one testing facility to get permitted to produce the thorium energy. And the testing part of it had no radioactive material. And so he contacted Idaho National Labs, working with the San Rafael Research Center, which is a center that I started as a county commissioner with the 7-County Coalition. We kind of put that together. And they said, yeah, we'd love to build that for you up here in Idaho. We can build you that testing facility. He said it's about $12,000 in materials to build it, 20 years and $80 million to permit it. Uh,
Oh my gosh.
so you say, if you want it to be a sanctuary state, how about a sanctuary state for nuclear energy? Let's like tell the federal government we're going to go ahead and just do that here in Utah, keep it in Utah, develop it in Utah, test it in Utah, and then start producing energy for Utah. We're exempt from the Nuclear Energy Commission. Ironically, that's exactly what Texas is doing, and God bless Texas, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you
They
know,
have thorium there then too.
they're just doing regular nuclear reactor stuff.
Does
Small
that require
format.
us to separate from the grid like Texas is, or it be in our own grid?
That's so when you put it on the grid, now you're subject to interstate commerce, and so you subject yourself there.
Is that doable, or do we have agreements in place that doesn't allow us to do that?
To separate the grid? It would not be a simple process, but to create the plant that could actually do it and prove it. I don't know what the federal government would do if you said, well, we've got a plant here that would power the entire western United States, but until you let us hook onto the grid, I guess it's...
Is it something that like a reservation, like a Native American reservation can do?
It's a well, bad idea.
You know, a lot of those down in Lyman.
We do.
Let's make this happen.
Reservations love it.
Yeah.
Right, and it would be amazing for
That's a good
getting
idea.
them out of
Oh,
the
yeah, that's a
I'll
great
point you to
idea.
your cabinet.
All right. Right back here.
Two quick comments. One is just about the nuclear. I met Dr. Mehmet, and he's awesome. We played a nerdy card game together.
Isn't he awesome?
But yeah, basically, thorium is in the dirt, so it's everywhere. So and he's going out to the Philippines to make all these thorium plants on every island in the Philippines to actually power the Philippines and make them independent from India. So it's really awesome.
It is awesome.
The other comment, and then to my question, was about SB 54. One of the biggest reasons I've heard for not repealing it is, it's really popular with Utahns.
Just like the new state flag.
Speaking from experience, it's mostly ignorance. Like, I was ignorant to it, just what the implications are, and so the whole argument of it's not popular doesn't stand. It really needs to be broadcast what the consequences are, and that it's just the wealthy get elected, right? So I think that just keep going and stand by those principles, because it's
We
really,
heard that it was Spencer Cox spent over $350,000 on gathering signatures. Does that sound right?
Spent that much?
Yeah.
I heard it was around $15 a signature for 28,000 signatures.
Yeah.
How many of you had people come to your door to get a signature for Spencer?
They wouldn't come here.
so
They know better.
Not if you have a Trump flag out there.
Speaking from experience, it really is ignorance, which is what a representative republic is there to combat, right? Is to have educated and informed electorate, right?
Yeah.
So this other question is probably going to come across as combative or accusatory. That's not my intention.
I've been waiting for one of those all night.
So it's really out of my own curiosity and ignorance. I'm fairly ignorant and very new to this. So CPAC's Center for Legislative Accountability, they have your score at about a 75. Some of these bills, I understand not all bills are red and blue, but the way they color them, it's red and blue. And a lot of those bills specifically related to taxes, you side with a lot of the Democrats in those kinds of bills. So how would you explain some of those more nuanced votes that you've, and I know it's not really a fair question because we're not talking about all the specifics, but just in general, how would you address some of those?
I will say I am a budget hawk. I do track that really closely, and being a CPA, so I haven't looked at CPACs. I was looking through Club for Growths today, and I was like 12th, and I thought, man, these guys that are scoring above me are not as conservative as me. So I get in and I look at the bills and I try to figure out what bills are they talking about? What are the provisions that are on there? I will say I have quite a reputation that when I vote on a bill on the floor, people look and say he must have a reason for why he voted that way. I'm not one to like look around and see how's this person voting, how's that person voting. I don't check those things in advance. And back there, he asked why my CPAC score was less than what I get a C. Is that-
75 C. Yeah, sure.
and I don't know, but I want to go look at it. Same thing with the Club for Growth, because Club for Growth is really important. I look at them, and another anecdote on this. I wanted Utah to join the Freedom Caucus because you got the Federal Freedom Caucus, and they've started opening up state chapters. So I started calling on the chair. For 4 years I was the chairman of the Conservative Caucus. And I thought, this would be good. We could get the Freedom Caucus in Utah. They wouldn't return my calls. Month after month goes by, and I was getting a little bit frustrated. And finally, they called back and they said, look, you guys do really well on the social issues, but financial issues, you've gone from $20 billion to $30 billion, and nobody's voted against the base budget bill. And so we don't want you. We don't want you in the Freedom Caucus. And it was like, touche, You go back and you say, well, it is a must-pass bill. It's like futile to vote against it. You're just going to cost yourself chairmanships or whatever. So, but at the end of the day, you say, well, they're not wrong. We did not vote against these bills that raised that budget. I don't know if that ties into some of those things. I'd like to see my 2024. I don't know if that's a 2024 score, but because I started voting against all the base budget bills, which is not. It really is uncomfortable to do that because everybody puts in all the work. It's like the culmination of the thing. Okay, all the work's been done. Here's the base budget bill, and one person votes against it, or two people. That's a little bit uncomfortable. I do vote with Democrats quite often on I always say it's that horseshoe effect. It's like when we're talking about liberty, and then if they want to legalize marijuana, they're probably going to find a friend and Phil, not because I like marijuana, but because I like it. So, I appreciate the question. One bill that I voted for a few times is the film incentive. And my logic there, to try to explain it to people, I say, look, we spend $90 million a year promoting tourism out of the tourism budget. Yet, most of the people that come to my area come because they want to see where Stagecoach or
all the movies were made.
Where all these movies were made. Back to the Future, Goonies, whatever. It's like, so the return on investment for the film industry is better. It hurts me with Libertas. It hurts me with some of these others. It honestly goes against my small government thing, but it's really important to a lot of people. And I say, let's take it out of the advertising budget and just give it to the film producers who are actually doing something. So.
Well, film used to be, I worked in the film industry before the writer's strike. We were third largest film capital in even more than Canada. We lost that because Canada made tax breaks and they all went up there after that. But Utah is huge and we've lost that. And that was a huge moneymaker that brought in a lot of money into our economy.
Yeah, that's one of those that I hate trying to justify. It's kind of a guilty pleasure and it is kind of a snub back to the advertising budget of, hey, you guys spend all this money and yet John Wayne still makes more money for Utah than all of you. Back here.
Yeah, so my wife and I just escaped from California back in September. And we both had Turkey Seal licenses, and they just are squashing the gun laws in California to the max. So we escaped here, and now we're in America. But then you have the Biden regime that's passing these red flags laws. Number one, how does that affect Utah? And the reason why I ask is because we have a right to bear arms, and I don't need the Second Amendment to tell me that. My God tells me that. I'm going to protect my family. But my concern is, like yesterday, General Flynn said we have over 100,000 military-age Chinese men in this country that are coming across our border. And he says that's 10 battalions. Do you know what 10 battalions of CCC soldiers can do? What is Utah as a governor? What can do? Number one, do we even know how many of these people are in Utah? It wouldn't take a lot.
What can a governor do? And it kind of comes back to stop promoting the fallacy that everything is hunky dory and that we're big-hearted people who welcome our neighbors. And
how about selling land to farmland? Like
Chinese.
they're buying up hundreds of thousands.
Utah's what, third in the nation on how many acres there
military
are?
bases. As a governor, can a governor do anything to stop that from Chinese nationals buying up?
I mean, the governor, I don't know how many of you went to a convention 2 years ago when Ron DeSantis was there. Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And I looked at something that he said. The governor is not the legislature, but he is the leader. And he doesn't come and check which way the wind's blowing. He brings the important matters and he leads out on those things. So as a governor, I would say there's nothing you can't do as a governor through the proper channels of leadership and messaging. Ultimately, on legislative things, back to your point, legislature is going to have to legislate some of those things. Governor is going to do what the governor is going to do. To say no Chinese people can own land, so they say, well, no Chinese nationals, and it's like, okay, well, let's define that. We could say the CCP can't own land in Utah, and that's the bill we passed last year. Yeah. And so if you go back and say, well, this land is owned and it's got ties to the CCP, the Communist Party, they have to dispose of it at a certain time. If not, it reverts to the ownership of the state. Other states have done something similar, more or less than that. But the main thing, yeah,
really bad. I went to go to the gun range. The majority of the people in line at the gun range were Chinese nationals, and the weapons they had, they just looked like puppies, like Boy Scouts.
Here in Utah?
No,
California.
Back in California, I had a friend I was a special inspector there for 20 plus years. And I have a friend who's a superintendent, and he's doing a big project in Newport Coast, $30 million house for a Chinese national lady, and she says they own all the TSA stuff going on in all the ports on the West Coast. That's what she does. And they let stuff through all the time, so there's stuff coming our way. I'm not trying to sound like a mom, but the reality is, she said we will own California in 2 years, and that was a year ago. And I've watched what they're doing there, and it's not good.
I'm trying to remember what the name of the book is. It's by Frank Gaffney, and it's about the selling out to the Chinese. It's an extremely good book, but in there he talks about, they bought Hollywood, they bought the media, they own our processing plants, they own our fertilizing plants, they're buying up our land. It's like, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah, they buy up our politicians. We do have a captured White House. I have no doubt about that. So then we get back to maybe a more central question. Okay, what happens when the national debt sinks us, when the Chinese start doing this? Well, the states better be strong states, and Utah better be right at the top of it. So, good.
Phil Lyman.
Thank you. Back here behind you.
Could you educate me on the role as a governor with the National Guard and what would guide you to use the National Guard? And would that be sooner than later to protect border? Or I know some of them are going over to Africa right now and things like that. So could you let me know what the role is?
Well, the governor is over the National Guard. You can call it the National Guard. The one maybe Achilles heel of the National Guard is it still is national. So a lot of states have created the State Guard. Kristi Noem in South Dakota has created the State Guard. I like that idea. I like a well regulated militia. Thank you. And I think Utahns would love to be part of a State Guard. I was asked a couple of months ago during the session. By Channel 2, they wanted to interview me, and they said, so what would you do on the border? I said, I'd send the National Guard. And he said, how many would you send? I said, I don't know. We've got 7,500 in the state. I'd probably send 2,000 if they would go, and if Governor Abbott wanted them. And that it seemed like a reasonable thing to do to protect the borders. We spend $900 million a year in Utah to deal with the problem of illegal immigration. So we could afford to fix that problem. When the governor was asked the same question, he said, I'm sending 5 National Guard and 5 Highway Patrol, and so 10 total. And yet now,
and yet he's touting it.
I deployed the National Guard. It's like, That's not deploying the National Guard. I don't know. So,
He is so cool.
did I mention sending him down to fix the road?
No.
Oh, so there's a road that goes from Escalante to Hole in the Rock, and the BLM has said, counties, that's our road, you can't fix it. Well, the law says that's a county road and it's a state road. By law, states own the roads, counties own the roads jointly, and they can fix the road. So, but the counties are saying, well, I don't want to do a repeat of Commissioner Lyman and end up going to jail. You know, the sheriff's saying, I don't want to arrest people, and you know. So here's what I've said: is I would call up the engineering unit of the National Guard. Amazing, they have heavy equipment, graders. Send them down to do the road. They could do it in a day, come back, and if somebody wanted to take them on, it's like, well, what are you gonna do? Come and go to war with Utah over the things that we're supposed to do. So I think the National Guard is waiting for some leadership. Katie Hobbs deployed the National Guard to the border in Arizona. They're down there pushing papers, processing people into the country and giving them, their bus pass and their visa card to go off to Utah. And it's like, man, if I was in the National Guard and my governor sent me down there and that's what I was doing, I'd be really upset. So,
but you said National Guard and then possibly a state army? Is it
Guard.
state
Guard. Yeah.
It's what you would like to
Did they do a state guard? It's not my idea and it's not innovation. I think it's a smart thing. South Carolina is big on their state guard. I've got a friend down there in South Carolina. It's so fun to talk to him because he's all about South Carolina. The United States do it that idea. What's that?
Are you committing to that idea?
To a state guard?
Yeah.
I honestly have not looked at the implications of that, but I would totally commit to that.
Isn't the highway patrol more or less a state guard, but would increase maybe the division of it?
I think the way I envision the state guard and what I've seen in South Dakota is it's more like old geezers like us saying, yeah, I want to be part of the state guard. And it's like, okay, well, you're part of the state guard, and now you're part of an organization that when we need you, we'll call you up. And I shouldn't say old geezers because it'd be young geezers too. So
I'm just saying that highway patrol, our state police, there is that division.
That's a good point.
It's already there, and they're all over the state, but you could put pockets of state guard people that.
Yeah, I think it would be more of a voluntary group of people. Casey.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go listen to Matt Gates speak, and he's got a lot of good things to say, right? But they were down there and they were kicking around this, about the illegal immigration. Somebody asked him that question: "What do you do about the immigration problem?" He said, "Elect a new governor."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost like he said, "Duh."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Honestly, it is like
duh.
Thanks.
So, as a member of the Utah Air National Guard, a couple years ago we were impacted by the federal vaccine mandate, and then continue to be impacted by policy pushing DEI that's impacting recruiting and retention. I'm just curious, as a governor, what would you do to protect and help reinforce members of both the Utah National Guard and Air National Guard?
Well, so the question was it 2 years ago? A couple of years ago, the National Guard was required to get vaccinated to stay. And what would I do as a governor? It's interesting because when that came up, first of all, I argued the year before to define the direct health emergency. We wouldn't do it because we wanted to leave that avenue open. The next year we came back and people were leaving Utah because they wouldn't get vaccinated, so they couldn't work at Zions Bank. They couldn't work for the state. They couldn't work in the National Guard. Different things. And I said, who could have possibly foreseen, and this is to the Republicans, who of us could possibly have foreseen a year ago that there would be a vaccine mandate like this? The answer is every one of us, and we did nothing. I said, God help us for what we didn't do, because people are leaving the state. It's affecting their lives. We had the opportunity, the responsibility to do something, and we did nothing. Shame on the leaders that take that position. So And my applause to anybody that stood up to that tyranny, because a lot of them did it at the cost of their jobs.
Yeah, there's many in my unit that applied for religious waivers, were denied, and had to leave.
Denied. And when in this country, I mean, that's a HIPAA violation. Your vaccination is your business. Yet here we are saying, you better come and show me that you got a shot. If you didn't, I mean, it's such a violation. If that doesn't wake us up, it's the same.
Kind of a fool me once kind of thing. I think it'll never happen.
It'll happen. Anyway, I appreciate that too.
Okay, so I want you to talk a little bit about economic development. We've had this long line of governors that pride themselves on making the whole world amazing here in Utah, and they take credit for all that small businesses do. We've had a governor, when Huntsman was governor, he brought in all the Silicon Slopes people so that we could have more business, which was great, but it also created a housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And then Governor Herbert's done his things and different things like that. Tell us about where you stand with things like a gondola for Cottonwood Canyon for skiers and a baseball park for just one area of the state that the rest of us have to fund, and just in general what your approach is to economic development.
Could you hear that back there? So I'm all in favor of a gondola. For the guy that owns the ski resort and wants to pay for it.
Amen.
If he wants to build a gondola and he's got $2 billion to do it, build your gondola. Talk to your neighbors, buy the property, put in a gondola. But for the taxpayers to do that is just bizarre. It is a sin. Is that what you said?
It's a sin.
And the same with the stadium. I like baseball. That was the first. We have to pass a resolution. Who likes baseball? Everybody. I like baseball. Yeah, I like baseball. It's good. And they have former pro players there, and coaches, and everybody likes baseball. Who doesn't like the slappy sound of that ball hitting the mitt? I don't know. So you pass that resolution, and the next week it's like, okay, well, who wants to give $1 billion to fund a stadium? And you better be on board with this one, or you're not getting your bills passed. You're not getting your funding. If you're not going to support this, we're not going to support you. All of this collusion and coercion So that's not economic development. That is Marxism takeover of recreation. It's like circus and games. It's Rome. I mean, we're just like, this is nuts.
Well, and if Phil Miller and Ryan Smith want them here, they've got the money to build them themselves, right?
So they came through and they're like, well, I'm being facetious here. Well, here's the good news. The state's only putting in $1 billion. The stadium's going to cost $2.5 billion, but we get to own it when it's done. It's like, well, who wants to own a stadium? I mean, if the state would own my property and let me use it, then that means I don't have to pay property tax on it. So, of course, I would love to give all my property to the state if I could retain ownership or retain use of it. And then they said, well, it's not like we're not getting money off this. We're going to get rent $150,000 a month. That's $1.8 million a year on $1 billion investment. Do the math of what kind of return that is. I was like,
100
okay.
centuries later.
It's horrible. It's like,
and we've got to maintain it.
And we've got it. Well, there's a contract that they'll maintain it, but it becomes too big to fail, because what if it doesn't make money?
And it won't.
I mean, it might.
If it made money,
I think initially, but it's like with everything else.
I like that. I'm going to use that. Stadium time.
It'll make money till it doesn't.
Well, the thing is if it would make money, the private sector would already be doing it.
Well, I think it will. I think it will make money, and I think the private sector is saying, I think it'll make money, and I think we could score $1 billion bonus by getting the taxpayers to kick in that much. That's my feeling.
What do you say to the people that live in your community that run small businesses and every day put it all on the line to run this country, that their dollars are going to pay for a stadium in a place that's nowhere near where they are? Why should small business owners in San Juan or Blanding or St. George have anything to do with what's happening on the Wasatch Front? That's the thing that I think is killing our small business owners in Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, everywhere.
People are not dumb. They can see, again, it's that George Carlin saying it's a big club and you ain't in it. Mm-hmm. And their stuff's going to fund something else. We watch it up here. You see a giant development going on down the street, and it's like, It used to be if you wanted to be a developer, you find somebody willing to sell you some land. You go and you put in a bunch of infrastructure, spend a ton of money, start selling lots with the hope that you can get enough money back to cover your costs and then some. Now you go to the county, they say, hey, we've got this shopping mall, why don't you have that, tear it down, we'll pay for all this infrastructure. You can build high density housing, and if you promise to rent it to only low income tenants, then you get the low income subsidy. And as a developer, you're going, you mean so I could go in and basically with a third of the money, I can own the whole thing, kind of like a stadium, and it's a boondoggle. So that's where policy, it's like we will always have housing, well, we'll likely always have housing things, but we pass policy that make it like an impossible thing. We'll always have homeless people, but we do policy that turns it into a real crisis. We'll always have illegal immigration, but we pass policy that turns it into a boondoggle for somebody. And every one of these you can go back, and this is, I guess, where we started was you can go back and you can see who benefits. Cui bono, that's what it's the Latin phrase. Cui bono, who benefits from this? And you'll find, oh, this was not done with the best interest of the citizens in mind. To your question, what would I do? I dealt with this in my CPA firm. In fact, in Blanding, this is decades ago, but they came and they're like, oh, we're getting a call center. It's going to be great. We're going to get 50 jobs in this call center. And so the cities, obviously, it makes sense that the city would donate the land and help them build the building and give them free utilities for a year, whatever. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about this call center. And it was for income tax preparation. This is a call center for income tax preparation. They can call in and they get questions answered. And I said, oh, that's what I do in my office. People call me with tax questions and I answer those. Oh, this wouldn't compete with you. This is on a national level. And I said, what about the pad? You're from Lyman?
No, I had a roommate in college from Lyman. I'm from Minnesota, and I live in Eagle Mountain.
All right. So what about the patio restaurant? What about what subsidy do they get? They maybe the city should go subsidize their burger flippers. Well, maybe should. So yeah, I'm all for that. Again, it gets back to what is the American dream? To me, the American dream is to have a little family and a vacation and a motorcycle or something. Not this $1 billion stuff, but in Utah, it is that. And I will answer just one more question on the housing thing. I used to feel like this is not fair. Why are we paying for all of this growth on the Wasatch Front? As I've seen all the problems that come with it, it's like how much money you want, you can have it. Just keep those high density houses and condos and things.
So along with, how do you deal with the developed legislature that we've got?
The what?
The developed legislature that we've got. How do you deal with
that?
Because they really truly control everything, and they take local control and they force that on the different cities, and so the cities bow and we give them higher density lots and areas, and then they take and build still 300 or 3,500 square foot townhomes and on those same lots, or even houses on those same small lots. So they're just making more money. So how do you deal with this?
Okay, I want to come back to that one as kind of my final point, and you guys have been super patient. But there's a question back here.
I have noticed, I've lived here since 1980, and I've been precinct chair before. I'm precinct chair right now. There was a marked difference in our precinct meeting this time as opposed to any other time that I've been involved. And this is in Orem. They voted Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
And I was asked these people, and they were moderate Republicans. Then you ask the questions, well, who did you vote for in the 2020 election? They voted for Joe Biden because they didn't like the mean tweets. They were okay with abortion, and as long as they agreed with maybe 90% of the other platform of that candidate. And I mean, we were dumbfounded. We could not believe the change that took place. This is Orem. So I'm wondering, how are you going to get elected? Like, what's the message that you're going to bring? How are you going to do this? Because, like when you say, I don't think people are dumb, they're asleep, but they're like, it's almost like they're anesthetized. Like something has happened, and things that you would think they would never be okay with, like abortion, Republicans are okay with that. And so, like with myself, they tried to do a little coup and get me out.
And the first question they asked me was, what did you think about Trump's election fraud? And, I went ahead and answered all of that. But, I mean, if it wasn't for our former mayor in that meeting saying, don't nominate me, I'm voting for Elaine. I want to know what you're going to do, because we're not dealing with the same thing that we were dealing with even 2 years ago. There's a change, a marked change in the people at the top.
Okay, I'll wrap that into my final thing too. There was one. I'll do one more here. Then.
Okay. So I was in a school community council meeting, and I was my kids are in Spanish immersion. They were talking about the Chinese immersion program. And the principal told me that the Chinese immersion program is actually funded by the CCP, that the teachers are selected by the CCP and paid by the CCP. So my question is, I don't understand how, like, our government's now saying they want to get rid of TikTok and they won't let government officials have TikTok on their phone, but we're allowing CCP to come in and teach our children in a language we don't understand. I was talking to another parent, and she was telling me how all the children are getting emotionally, abused. She said that the cultural difference of these teachers coming from China and how they treat the kids is abusive. She says that they talk down to them, treat them like they're idiots. I want to understand, why are we letting the CCP come in and teach our children?
Has anybody heard the term wolf diplomacy?
No.
I'm not even sure where that comes from. It might be from Frank Gaffney's book, but wolf diplomacy, it came from a movie, but it's Chinese diplomacy. 50 years ago, China they were subservient, they bowed, they wanted to just be part, but they had a plan. They've had this plan for a long time, which was to take over the currency, to take over the world, become the world currency, become the world dominant power, and they clearly state that the United States is the thing that stands between them and that thing. And wolf diplomacy says, I can't remember the terms of it, but it's aggression and basically whatever it takes. The wolf tells you what it's about, but it's time. And they've implemented wolf diplomacy, and it's time for China to do the final stage of their thing, which is to take everything that they want from us. Somebody today texted me and said, don't kid yourself. They don't want your money. They've got money. They can print money. They want your kids. They want slavery. They want...
And we're giving them to them right now.
We are totally giving them to them. So
Is there something you can do as a governor to stop that? To say, hey, no more Chinese immersion programs in this state? No more CCP funding? No more sending your Chinese communistic teachers to teach our children?
That's the perfect question, because it's kind of the same question. So I want to say this. And I don't ever want to come across as authoritarian or like I have answers to things. I want to be completely transparent. But I went down to St. George a couple of years ago to talk about election integrity, and it was on everybody's mind. This is horrible. We need to do something. And I went up and they said, "Do you want us to play some walk-on music as you come up on the stage?" And I said, "Do you have Dudley Do Right's 'Here He Comes to Save the Day' music?" They played. They didn't have that, so they played "We Need a Hero" or something. But I said, I said, but the punchline is, nobody is coming to save the day. That's your job.
Right.
The governor cannot save the day. It's still America. It's still a Republican form of government. And I feel the winds are shifting. I was troubled by that. And this comes back to what I talked about. If the caucus night had gone really sideways, and it went pretty sideways in quite a few areas, but in other areas, it went pretty smoothly. And people were saying, I stood up and said, I'm voting for Phil Lyman, and everybody voted me in as the delegate. So I take some comfort in that. I look at the parents who say, it's not going to happen again. Try this again. We're not turning our kids over. I look at the climate change. Utah joined the Civilian Climate Corps. Gavin Newsom came out with a big, thank you to the 5 governors that joined the Civilian Climate Corps. This was just a little while back. 4 Democrats and Governor Cox. There's the new service program in Utah. I think it's called One Utah or One Serve or something. I don't know if anybody caught that announcement. It was a presentation. National Governors Association was very prominent there. The Carnegie Institute was there to, applaud and help shepherd this thing through. And the governor got up and said, because Utah gives more charitable money, more charitable giving than any state, both in financial terms and in our service, therefore, moving forward, any company who gets any state benefit will pay $20 paid leave to their employees to go do charitable service. So in my office, in my CPA firm, during the summer, we take a day a week and we go do something. We go up the main street and we, chop down all the trees that are overgrowing on an abandoned building, whatever. It's like we want our town to look better. Under Governor Cox's plan, now I guess I need to fill out some paperwork to prove that I've done that. Otherwise, I could be fined for not having done the paperwork. And what is that now? Is that still charitable giving? No, that's that's stuff that's, and like I said about the appointing people, anybody that exhibits king-like tendencies like that, it's not right. It's just not right. I hope people feel it. And that, to the point back here, I think people feel it. I feel the wind is changing. I feel it shifting. I might be naive. What's the path to beat Spencer Cox? He won last 4 years ago with 36% in the primary. I should turn off the camera so nobody knows my strategy here. I don't think he can get a lot more than that in Utah. So a big part of it is to try to make sure we don't have more than 2 people in the primary election. There's Carson Jorgensen, who a lot of you know and a lot of you like, which would make sense. If you like Phil Lyman, you probably like Carson Jorgensen because we feel very similar on so many issues. I like Carson a lot, and again, cannot leave this room, but facetiously again. But between Carson and I, we both said, whoever comes out ahead in the convention, the other one will back out and support them, so that we don't have a split primary. We're on the same team, and it's not anti-Cox, it's pro-Utah. I love Utah. Yeah. I love this. Yeah, I would go to jail for Utah if that's
It's not too late. You can have t-shirts to go on.
Yeah, right. One more back here.
I work at a school, and I've been asking kids, does the federal government have more power? Do the states have more power? And they all say the federal government. And I'm wondering how much of Utah is captured for the agenda, and how do we get our state back? Because these kids are being
brainwashed,
taught, conditioned to think that the federal government tells us what to do.
So that we've seen that play out before. It was just before 1776 when a group of people said, we're not doing this, to the motherland. We're not doing this. We're not at that point in America. This is still a Republican form of government. We still have states, and the states are the ones that are going to fix this. At the Salt Lake Lincoln Day dinner, which was the most intimidating group I had ever spoken to, because I assumed this was not my people. It turned out they were my people. It turned out that they were much greater reception for my message than there was for Governor Cox's. But one of the things that I said there is, I like the parable of the foolish man who built this house on the sand. And the rains came and the floods came and that house washed away. And then the wise man who built his house on the rock, and that rock stood firm. I like to think maybe it was the same man. Maybe he learned, this doesn't work. I tried it once, it doesn't work. Let's do something different. That's where we're at, I think, now. That's where Utah is going. I think it's time for us to do away with foolish, nonsense, woke ideology. I think everybody here feels that. I think Utah generally feels that, and that's what we're doing.
So that means to hell with a 15-minute city.
Yeah. People say, how do you feel about a 15-minute city? And I said, well, you're talking about a guy that comes from a 3-minute city. So surveillance. The keystone of a 15-minute city is surveillance and water footprint, carbon footprint, travel footprint, control. It's ugly. So
Sorry, I know you were trying to get out.
that was my big
Listen,
punchline.
I'm probably the only one in here from Salt Lake County.
Ah, well, thank you for coming.
We are. Yeah, that's right. I mean, and I promise you, I am not going to vote the way my neighbors want me to. I mean, then I don't know how you're going to get over the Democrats in Salt Lake County. So
There are a lot of conservatives in Salt Lake County, and messaging. I set up my strategy at the beginning, which was I'm not going to play to the middle, to the squishy middle, which a lot of consultants say, well, that's where you got to go. You got to pick up the squishy middle, and I say, I want the hot coals on the right to get together and create some synergy, some fire themselves. So we'll push that past. We're this close, and it is the Republican primary where this will happen. Where hopefully, we're not talking about the general election in November. That would be a different fight. Brian Keene would be the Democrat person that would go up against. I think Republicans have shown that they still have the advantage there. Don't discount that. But this one is the Republican primary. And there's a path.
Can the illegal
promise you
aliens
there's-
vote in this state?
What's that?
Can illegal aliens vote in the state because they can't in California?
Technically, or do they?
No, they can't vote, but they become part of the database, which creates a line of credit when you want to perceive. Then it's like, oh, well, there are all these citizens that live there. Includes the count. The census counts so yeah. Thank you.
A couple of years ago, I was at a meeting, and it was actually via Zoom because everyone was scared of the pandemic. But and the Governor Cox was there. He asked. I guess I should consult Caillou. I asked him the very first question. I said, because this was right when they started doing the mask mandate nonsense. And I said, Governor Cox, can you talk to me about the constitutionality of a mask mandate? He looked at me through the screen. Who knows what he was looking at?
And through his mask.
Yeah. Didn't answer the next question.
The old state
I
flag.
went back 3 times and asked him the same question. And we've got hundreds of people from the bar watching me ask this question. He would not answer my question. Phil Lyman is a man of principle. He would say without hesitation, that's unconstitutional. We would never do it.
Amen.
Right. Please spread the word for this good man. Let's get him in office. Thank you. April 11, we're going to have Heidi Baldery, State Senate, for those of you who'd like to come back.
She's good.
She is good.